We have lots to discuss in today's video, including some off-season rumors. We're going to take a look at the Toronto Maple Leafs, Edmonton Oilers, New York Islanders, and the Buffalo Sabres. Plus, we have news from the NHL waiver wire. We're going to discuss a little bit further, more details on the Flyers moving on from head coach John Tortorella. Obviously, at one point, Tortorella was expected to likely remain in a different role. What changed in Philadelphia? We'll discuss what we've learned since it was first announced earlier today. A bunch of injury updates. We have a signing in Washington. Crosby has broken another Wayne Gretzky record. An interesting situation for the Flyers in their first game with new head coach Brad Shaw and Cam York. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to discuss here in today's video, all kinds of NHL news to take a look at. So let's take a look first at a very quick update from the NHL waiver wire. Yesterday, we had two players from Nashville on waivers. So we had Kiefer Bellows and Del Gaizo. Bellows and Del Gaizo both on waivers yesterday. They both cleared, so they can both be reassigned to the Milwaukee team in the AHL. And there's no claims, nobody changing teams in that aspect here today. We also had another big milestone here tonight. Ryan McDonagh of the Tampa Bay Lightning playing in game number 1,000. So obviously another big milestone. McDonagh's been, a terrific defenseman, great leader, great defender his whole career. Obviously, originally drafted by Montreal. A lot of people may not realize that. Ended up going with the New York Rangers before he ultimately played. Played a big chunk of time there. Was the captain for a while. Ended up in Tampa, over to Nashville for a while, then back to Tampa. But he's had a heck of a run. A great player. And plays a hard, tough style as well. So to reach 1,000 games and to do everything he's done is certainly quite an accomplishment. So congrats to Ryan McDonagh. As I mentioned, the big news today, which came out pretty early this morning, was the Philadelphia Flyers have moved on from head coach John Tortorella. Now, this was surprising in a way and in a way not. As you may recall, if you follow this channel closely, I had a video out 2-3 days ago. And part of that was looking at 5 or 6 coaches I thought were on the hot seat and could be let go by the end of the NHL regular season. I didn't expect anybody to be getting fired today or even this week, with most teams having anywhere from 10, 12, 11, 9 games left. I figured most teams are going to let their people ride things out, and then usually right after the season when it first ends, usually you get a few announcements right away. This coach isn't going to be back. This team is moving on, whatever. One of those coaches I talked about in teams was Philly and John Tortorella. As I mentioned, obviously the team has stepped back this year. They made some progress last year. This year has been as good, although I don't know that it's really that big of a deal for the team. I think Danny Briere and Keith Jones were prepared for a little bit more pain as they continue to go through this rebuild, but it's been tough on some people, including Tortorella. So we knew that Tortorella also had a contract for at least one more year. And it was also expected that Tortorella might go from being the head coach to being involved in either an assistant general manager or some sort of other front office role with the team when the time came for him to leave the bench. So it wasn't expected that he was going to go, from being the coach to being fired. So I didn't think it was going to play out that way. I thought we'd see an announcement that they've mutually agreed that he was going to change his role or something. That's kind of, we've seen that there was times during his tenure where instead of being on the bench, he let the new interim head coach Brad Shaw run the bench for a game or two, and he'd go sit upstairs and evaluate from up there. Just seemed to have a real good in with the management. And so, we kind of thought that's where he would go. I mean, he's 66 years old. It makes sense that maybe he would want to, transition into something else. He's coached a long time. I believe it's 25-year anniversary coming up, or it might even be right this week from when he was first hired as the head coach in Tampa all those years ago. So clearly, something had changed here, and a lot of things I think were kind of building up. And as Danny Briere in the press conference that he had later today after the news broke, said it wasn't one thing, because a lot of people were pointing to his post-game comments the other night after the thrashing they got from the Maple Leafs, and saying that basically, he took a lot of the responsibility, and he kind of said that he wasn't really interested in learning how to coach a team in this situation, and he just kind of made it difficult for him to go back in that room. As I put as a comment on the video I put up this morning talking about that news, like, did Tortorella kind of fire himself? And in a way, I think he kind of did. And like I said, I think either way, this was going to be his last year. But I do think that after what we've seen, they kind of decided, you know what? I don't know if we want to keep him around to go into a management role. I think it's best if we just move on. At least that's my take. I think things have changed. Briere mentioned the last 2-3 weeks is kind of when things kind of went different. There's been a variety of things. So at the end of the day, they are happy with what he was able to help them with, but it's time to move on. I always kind of thought it wasn't a great fit, and I didn't expect him to be most patient coach during a rebuild. So we'll see. Obviously, Bradshaw will be in the mix. He'll get a chance to audition here for the last 10 games or whatever they have left. They won tonight against Montreal, so they get to win his debut as interim head coach. But Briere was kind of open to what the next coach was going to be and who they're going to look like and whatever. Like, he didn't really seem to have like a specific type in mind. He didn't really say. He said, it could be a younger coach, could be an older coach. Like, they're open to a lot of things. They just need to find the guy that they feel is the best fit. Now, as soon as this news broke this morning, it wasn't long before people were connecting the dots and saying, I think the next head coach in Philly is going to be Rick Tocchet. Now, of course, Rick Tocchett's currently the head coach in Vancouver. Vancouver's had an up and down season. We know Rick Tocchet has even made comments saying that this season has been challenging and exhausting in many ways. And he does have the ability to coach next year. There is a club option for a contract. So the team can say, we're going to invoke your contract. You're good. You're coming back next year. Or they could say, we're moving on. The team really likes Rick Tocchet. There's no doubt about that. So Vancouver, if they lose Tocchet, it's not going to be because they don't like him as a coach and thinking they need a change. I think they'd be quite happy to have him stay. But from what we have heard, there's kind of a mutual understanding between the team and the coach that they don't really want to talk about contract basically until the season's over, and that doesn't make sense for him to be like a lame duck coach and to go in next year without an extension. So it's you either agree that he wants to stay, you want to extend him, get it done early, it's like basically as soon as the season's over, or you don't and you part ways. That's kind of what most people are expecting things to go like. And we know he's got connections to Philadelphia. He was a longtime player there. Certainly, knows a lot of the alumni and a lot of the people that are running the team now. And it would make sense that he would be a guy that they would want. I think this kind of job is right up his alley. He'd be a great fit there. So if he's finding things in Vancouver, not really if he's not enjoying it anymore, then I can certainly see him taking the next gig in Philly. So do you think Rick Tocchet is the most likely next head coach for the Flyers? Let me know what you think down in the comments, and we'll talk about that further as well. Now, some other updates around some injuries tonight. The Oilers had to recall Olivier Rodrigue. The injury bug continues for them. Last night in the Oilers game against the Dallas Stars, of course, Edmonton's on a back-to-back here. Stuart Skinner got hurt. He had a knee to the head from Mikko Rantanen. I know the team's not happy. Corey Perry specifically was making comments. He's ticked off about it. So Skinner, obviously, with a headshot, is in concussion protocol. So he's not on the road. Now they're on the road tonight playing in Seattle. So certainly not ideal for Edmonton. But in that game, they had also lost Zach Hyman and Evan Bouchard for a stretch. And I didn't know, especially Hyman, I didn't think he was coming back. He had a real awkward fall where his leg kind of bent, and I was just like, that didn't look good. But he came back, and he seems to be okay. And then Bouchard got hurt, and I was like, oh boy, here we go again. But then he came back. So I'm not sure exactly what is going on with them, but clearly they're able to play. So they're really in a situation where these injuries could catch up to them and could really have an impact on their playoff run. Hopefully these guys can all be healthy before the start of it. We'll have to wait and see and monitor this closely. In Calgary, they're getting their captain back. Michael Backler returns tonight. He'd be in the lineup in the Calgary game against Dallas. The Rangers today announced that Matt Rempe is out week to week with an upper body injury. I wonder if that came from that fight he had the other day. I believe that was with Matthew Olivier. We'll have to see. I don't know any more about the injury. Just that it's an upper body, and he's considered week to week. The Flyers, one of their top prospects, Jet Lushenko, his OHL season is over, so he has now been assigned to finish up the year with the Phantoms in the American Hockey League. We also had another signing today, another one in Washington, once again involving a defenseman. They signed Jacob Chikrin, of course, to a mega deal just in the last 24, 48 hours, and now today they take care of Dylan McIlwrath, who's a Obviously, plays lower in the lineup, smaller role than Chychrun, but a depth piece that they want to keep around. He gets a 2-year deal, $1.9 million total value, so his cap hit will be $800,000 per season. So, small little piece of business there for Washington, but a player they want to keep around for depth purposes for sure. Philadelphia Flyers, of course, as I mentioned, tonight was the debut for the new interim head coach, Brad Shaw. Had an interesting situation with defenseman Cam York. They played the Montreal Canadiens tonight. I did see bits and pieces of that game, but I didn't get to see a ton of it. But I did watch the stats closely throughout the other games I was watching. And defenseman Cam York was dressed, but didn't take a shift. And if I'm not mistaken, the parts of the game that I did see, I don't even think he had a stick with him on the bench because he knew he wasn't playing. Bradshaw said that it was for disciplinary purposes. I don't think they had another defenseman with them that they could throw into the lineup, which is why he was dressed and punished that way. Otherwise, he would have been a healthy scratch. But we don't know the reasons. Probably missed a meeting or something along those lines. That's usually what it is. But York was disciplined tonight. So, if you're wondering why he played or was listed as playing but never had a shift, that's why. The coach's doghouse is where he's at right now. Sidney Crosby continues to defy the odds and beat Father Time here as he continues to play at an incredible pace. Breaks another Wayne Gretzky record. So Crosby tonight, even though they've got their butts whooped by the lowly Buffalo Sabres, the Penguins, I believe the final score was 7-2, I think it was. I know it was 7-1 at one point. Crosby did get a goal early in the game, which guarantees that he's going to be at least a point per game this year. So he breaks Wayne Gretzky's record for having a point per game season for the 20th time. So 20 point per game seasons. The only other, now holds that record, beating Wayne Gretzky. So that's incredible. I mean, Crosby, it's just not, he might not play at the same level he did in his absolute peakest part of his prime, but he's still, at his age, incredible. And then, for Pittsburgh, who are going to miss the playoffs for the third consecutive year, I know it's important to him to have his career with one team, but man, it'd be fun to see him get back into the playoffs, especially after seeing him at the Four Nation Face-Off team up with his good buddy Nathan McKinnon. Watching him in Colorado would be quite a treat, but it looks like it's probably something we're not likely going to see. Another news story popped up today. This one wasn't so good, but we'll see if anything comes from it because it's obviously in the early stages. But Rick Westhead of TSN, of course, investigative journalist who has been covering and the main go-to source for all the information around the SA case from the 4 players from the 2018 World Junior Canadian team that are facing trial here, which starts towards the end of next month. He has new details on a new case, also involving junior hockey, but this one goes way back. There's been a new case that's come about. 4 players were named in a sexual assault case from 1984. There are 4 members of the Windsor Spitfires that have been accused of assault. There is a 5th member of the team who I believe is also named. For right now, the names, of course, are not publicized, so we don't know who they are. The 5th member, though, so far the victim or the alleged victim is saying they remember them being there, but didn't, like they were in the room but didn't participate type of thing. So, yeah, so we'll see. At this point, we had heard, reading through the details, the only that they made mention, I know the first thing people want to do is figure out, well, who are these guys? If they're not going to be named, can we do some digging and figure it out? Probably not. I did take a look at the roster from the 83-84 Windsor Spitfire season. There's a few names that are recognizable on that team, but I know the language that was in the article from the comments from the alleged victim was that one of them went on to coach junior hockey. That's really all they said. And, as far as why it took so long, there's obviously, it's not an easy thing to do. And she said basically, over time, I think it was 7 or 8 years ago, she first told her now husband and then her children. And, it can be a difficult thing to talk about for sure. I can't speak with any kind of firsthand experience in that, but, from what I've seen and heard from victims that have, taken a long time to speak up before, I can only imagine what that goes through and all the pain and suffering that people can endure for years and years and years. So another case that it'll be interesting to see what happens. Like I said, they may not be as high a profile players, so I don't know if we'll get as much news follow up on it, but obviously we'll try to see what we can find out as more information on that case becomes public. The rumor mill, but let's get into a few things here. One, let's start with Toronto. According to Nick Kypreos, he says by far the biggest priority this offseason for Toronto is Mitch Marner, so don't expect other pending UFAs like John Tavares and Steven Lawrence, who the team very much has interest in bringing back both guys, but they're not likely going to get contract offers until the Marner situation is settled. So we know that Marner's camp has kind of advised that they didn't want to negotiate in season, so I don't know how this is going to play out. But as I've said before, if they don't want to talk until the season's over, well, it really boils down for the Leafs on when that is. If they have playoff success and they went on a deep run, well, there may not be a ton of time to negotiate a contract before free agency hits, like if they were to go to the conference finals or Stanley Cup final. If they are out early, like a first or second round, well, then their season will be done with enough time that they should be able to have ample negotiating time. But basically, they either want to sign Marner, and if they feel like they're losing him and that they're not going to be able to give him what he wants and he's going to leave, then they're going to want to go after Marner replacement. So one or two guys that they can spend money on as replacement players before they deal with Tavares and Lawrence. Now, of course, you get Matty Nyes in there as well as a pending restricted free agent. I would think that being an RFA, that he's probably not going. They're not going to be as concerned because of the fact that he can't just walk. But the thing that they do need to be aware of, because it seemed like a lot of chatter is ramping up around offer sheets after what happened with the Blues and Oilers last year. I can't say with any certainty that a team is going to go after him as an offer sheet target, and he also has to accept and sign it as well with the hopes of getting his contract done. I have no doubt he wants to be a Leaf, but you can only wait so long for your contract to get done, and you can only turn down so much money so many times. So it's going to be a challenging situation if they make Nyes wait, and if they have to overpay to keep Marner or what have you, like he could get squeezed, and that could present that kind of situation, and it could also affect what they can give to Tavares as well to keep him. So it's going to be interesting to see how they kind of, how like the pecking order, so to speak, set up. I think Kypreos is probably on to something here. They need to know the Marner situation because it's going to be a big money deal if they can get him signed to stay. And if they can't, they have to figure out how do they replace him. And you know that they're going to go big game hunting to other names around the league that might be available. There's not going to be I don't know of anybody right off the bat, to be honest, that's going to be on the market in free agency that could be anywhere comparable to Marner. So I'm not sure how they would do that. It would probably have to be through trade. Trades would be difficult as well because then you're giving up assets. It's complicated. So they just need to get that Marner situation dealt with before these guys get contracts. But again, like we've seen in other situations, other teams, like I said, with Nyes, it can open up an offer sheet that could sneak in there. Or if you get other guys that are waiting too long, that eventually they're going to get impatient. Now, Tavares will probably be willing to take his time and be a little bit more patient. A guy like Lawrence, who's a little bit, hasn't made as much money in his career. If he's got offers on the table from other teams, as much as he wants to stay with his hometown Leafs and he loves it there, he can only wait so long before he loses out on another deal that in case the Leafs, have to bail because they've spent too much money on other guys or something, right? So be curious to see how they handle that. But according to Kypreos, Marner priority number one, and he probably should be. In Edmonton, I wonder if they're going to have another move in the offseason that would compare to what they were doing at the deadline, because we had new reports today indicating that the Oilers and Islanders were close to making a deal at the deadline involving Jean-Gabriel Pageau. Before the Edmonton Oilers traded for Trent Frederick, they were working on a deal for Pageau, and that was their kind of primary target instead of Frederick. Now, the couple of reasons why that this deal did not happen is the Islanders wanted more than just draft picks. It sounds like the Oilers were offering more of a futures-based package. The Islanders, as much as they wanted some futures. They want, sounds like at least one roster player to come back. Edmonton probably needed that as well, because the other piece of this is that the Islanders didn't want to retain any money. And Pageau was making like $5 million. So they would have needed retention. So Lou Lamoriello was stingy on retention, which would have caused a roster player that would have had to be moved, which is what the Islanders wanted. And I think that's probably why he wouldn't retain. It's because he wanted to force the Islanders, into giving the Islanders a roster player, someone that they were obviously happy with. We don't know who they were targeting, but at the end of the day, it never happened. But they ended up going for Frederick, who of course is a pending UFA. Could they revisit a Pageau trade in the offseason? Now that we know that there's a high level of interest there, be curious to see. I know the Islanders are definitely going to make some moves, as we've talked about here in recent days. Pageau's been in and out of the rumor mill for a year or two. I can certainly see a case there where a team like Edmonton, or a few others for that matter, would like this guy. I think he still has some, jam and offense to his game defensively, like a good two-way player. Like, you're not going to get a ton of offense, but, if he can give you, maybe 15 goals and, 30 to 40 points and play a good two-way game with some salary, if they could get some salary retention, knock it down a little bit, I can understand why the Oilers were trying to do that. So we'll see if they revisit that as a potential target in the offseason. And in Buffalo, we had an interesting video put out today by the Sabres as a behind-the-scenes look from the NHL trade deadline. They gave us a little sneak peek of some of the conversations and what went down in their, war room, so to speak, when they were doing a deal with Ottawa between Dylan Cousins and Josh Norris. A couple of takeaways. One, if you haven't seen the video, check it out. It's kind of neat to hear these conversations, but it sounds like they had been talking for about at least 2 weeks before the deal came together and got done on deadline day. And it sounds like the Sabres were really targeting Norris. They really were really happy with his two-way game, happy with his offensive upside. They see him being first power play, first penalty kill, dimensional player in that aspect, which is I agree with in all aspects of that. The injuries were obviously a concern, so they had their doctor and their owner look everything over and make sure they were all on board. Everything was good that way. And then finally they get the deal done where they looked at Cousins and a second, I believe it was, for Norris and Bernard Docker. So, and then we hear the conversation with Norris and Adams for the first time, and Kevin Adams basically, really welcoming him and kind of just really pumping his tires and how much he's happy to have him. And then the other part that really stuck out for me was how Lindy Ruff, who was involved in these meetings, which is not as common thing. You don't always see the head coach as vocal and as involved in the discussions with the deadline day. So curious to see that they're giving him more of a voice than probably a lot of coaches get. And he went on, every time he would speak, the few times that he talked about what he liked about this deal is that they had to change the culture. So makes you think that, really from what we've seen, I don't think there's any character issues with Dylan Cousins, but I just think that something was kind of going wrong in that room, and they really felt like they needed to change the mix here. Norris and Cousins are both top-notch character players, at least from what I've seen. So I was curious to see that. Now, we know that the Sabres are going to continue to have other moves this offseason, like they have to, right? The other thing I took away from this as well is that with Ruff being that involved in the deadline, and the fact that the owner was involved, Terry Pegula was on the phone, involved with Adams and everybody. So, do you think he'd let everybody run the deadline the way they did and make a big, significant hockey trade the way they did if they weren't going to be back next year? Because I know when I did the video talking about coaches and managers, like people on the hot seat, I did talk about Buffalo. And I do wonder that. I think Lindy Ruff is going to be safe here. If Kevin Adams gets his way, I think Ruff's coming back. So I kind of changed my mind on that one. Not to say that I think they should make changes. I really think that something has to give there. But I guess the only way Ruff doesn't come back is if the owner decides that Adams is out as GM. Then I would think that the next GM probably fires Ruff and brings in a new coach. But otherwise, I wonder if they're both going to be back. But why would he let him run the deadline and make these kind of moves and be okay and on board with everything if he was considering giving him the axe here in a couple of weeks. And this doesn't make sense, right? So I think we're going to see status quo in Buffalo. I think we're going to see Kevin Adams trying to make a few more trades. I think Bowen Byram and UPL's names have been in the other names besides Cousins that have been out there the most. When it comes to UPL, he's had an up and down year. Hasn't really, grabbed that spot. We know Devin Levi's waiting and for the bigger role. James Reimer's been pretty good as well. Maybe do they go with Levi Reimer next year? Move UPL? We know Byram needs a new contract, looking for bigger money, bigger role. Is he going to get that in Buffalo? Do they move Byram or another guy? I really think that they're looking at a variety of things here, but I think the Sabres, who've actually done pretty well lately, like they won again big tonight against Pittsburgh, they might play themselves right out of a higher pick and get more towards like that 10 range or more, because they were last in the East, which put them about, I think, 4th overall. I think there was the Sharks, the Blackhawks, and the Predators were below Buffalo, but that was it. But now they've won enough that they're catching up to Pittsburgh, they're catching up to Philly, they're catching up to Boston. Like they might pass some of those teams. They've got games in hand, and they've won, 7 out of 10? I can't remember what the record is, but they've done a lot better lately. Like it's too little too late when it comes to playoffs, but it could really impact their draft pick overall. So I do wonder if that, depending on where they do pick, it could be in play again because they don't need a player that's going to help them in 2 or 3 years. They need a player that can help them today. Another name as well, Jack Quinn. I think he's another guy to watch as well. Quinn, Byram, and UPL, to me, are your top 3 guys in Buffalo. But just the culture thing from Ruff is really what caught my attention. And so, let me know what you think on that, or if any Sabres fans have anything to chime in on to add to what's going on there behind the scenes with the Sabres. Let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.